My life goes on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn, that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm. What to that rock I'm clinging? Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Good morning. Welcome to Unitarian Universalist Church of Silver Spring. My name is Catherine Lead, and I am the worship associate for today. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Today, we'll be continuing our month of worship focusing on renewal, and a beloved member of our congregation, Deborah Thornton, will be speaking to us on this theme. She'll be reflecting from the place of loss and darkness that we all have been experiencing in one way or another in this past year, and be taking us on the path towards renewal and light. I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say and to having an opportunity to reflect on her message. As our time together continues online, our staff and volunteers are continuing to work hard to keep our connection strong through these online services and in other ways. Whether you're watching with us live or joining us later, we're glad that you're here. If you're watching live, you can log into Google to participate in the chat and comments, but to protect privacy, they won't appear during later playback. During the service, though, they're very public. Many thanks to Joe Paoletti and Scott Sleek for moderating the chat. American Sign Language interpretation is available in a separate Zoom room. If you use ASL and you need a link to that Zoom room, email V as in Victor, S as in Sam, tech support at uucss.org to get the link. Thanks to Miyako Villanueva for ASL interpretation here and in the Zoom room. We'd like to extend a special welcome to visitors. Our welcome and captain today is Ryan Smith, who will answer your questions in the chat or at virtual coffee hour after the service. Thanks, Ryan. You can also find information about our congregation or Unitarian Universalists by joining our email list. Just contact membership at uucss.org. In a couple minutes, we will share our Chalice Lighting and Congregational Commitment. So It's going to be led by one of our young adults, Annabelle Lee. So now's a good time for you to go and get your chalice or a candle, even a flashlight, so that you're ready when it's time for us all to light our flames together. But first, a special thank you to all of the others who I haven't mentioned yet, who had made today's service possible. Thank you goes to Deb Weiner for being today's Sunday support volunteer and all of her help in organizing all the volunteers every week. And thanks to Jan Harrelson for publicizing the service every week and including today's. Thank you to Jake Ryder, our technical director, this week and many, many weeks before today. And thanks to Tamara Bowman, again, also every week up until today, many, many of the weeks, and today for facilitating today's virtual coffee hour. And thanks to the musicians who contributed their time and talent, and to the UUCSS staff team, and a special thanks today to Esther McBride, the initial worship associate, for all of her collaborative work with Deborah at the beginning of this process many weeks ago. And a final thank you to Annabelle, who will now light the chalice.
Now is the time to light our chalice. Let us know in the chat if the chalice is lit and where you are. Please join me in the words on your screen as we light our chalices and reaffirm our congregational commitment. May this light warm our hearts with love and caring, and guide us in the ways of truth. And now the congregational commitment. As we gather here for worship, we pledge ourselves to the endless search for truth, to the right of each to believe as mind, heart, and conscience dictate, to accept the responsibilities this freedom commands, and to implement our belief in the essential worth and dignity of every human being. May it be so. Now please join us in singing hymn number 95, There Is More Love Somewhere, which is based on a traditional African American song.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere.
Wabi Sabi, a book written by Mark Reibstein, narrated by Marcia Thrall. Wabi Sabi is a way of seeing the world that is at the heart of Japanese culture. It finds beauty and harmony in what is simple, imperfect, natural, modest, and mysterious. It can be a little dark, but it can also be warm and comfortable. It is more of a feeling than it is an idea. And this story starts with a Zen proverb that says, "An old pine tree can teach you the sacred truths." Wabi Sabi was a cat who lived in Kyoto, Japan. One day, visitors from another country asked Wabi Sabi's master what her name meant. It had never occurred to her before that Wabi Sabi was anything more than her name. Wabi Sabi watched her master draw breath through her teeth, shook her head, and said, "That is hard to explain." The cat's tail twitching, she watches her master, still waiting in silence. Curious now, Wabi Sabi wondered if her friend Snowball could explain the meaning of her name to her. Snowball, who had been napping, stretched and yawned and sighed and said, "That's hard to explain." She blinked. "It's a kind of beauty," she added, after a minute, her eyes closing again. An old straw mat, rough on cat's paws, pricks and tickles, hurts, and feels good too. Then Snowball went back to sleep. Wabi Sabi wasn't sure she understood, but she did not want to bother Snowball anymore. So she asked Rascal the dog if he knew about Wabi Sabi. Rascal was smart, but also kind of mean. "That's too hard to explain to someone like you," he snapped. Rascal said, almost to himself, "Poor Wabi Sabi, as simple as a brown leaf, so ordinary." "Now I'm even more confused," sighed Wabi Sabi. "Am I beautiful or ordinary? Can anyone explain Wabi Sabi to me?" she cried. A bird flying by thought the question was for her. "That's hard to explain," she said to Wabi Sabi, "but there is someone who can help you. His name is Kosho, and he lives on Mount Hai to the east." A wise old monkey living among the pine trees knows Wabi Sabi. "Thank you," said Wabi Sabi, and off she went to learn what her name meant. To get to Mount Hai, she had to cross through the city. Dazzled by big buildings, shiny glass, sleek cars, and awed by the busy, sharply dressed people, Wabi Sabi wondered if these pretty things could indeed be Wabi Sabi. She decided that if her name was true to her, it must be softer, quieter, and darker. Even in cities, before the shock of new light, the colors of dusk. A short time after Wabi Sabi entered the woods, she arrived at the foot of Mount Hai. The woods were dark now. Hoping to find Kosho in the morning, she curled up beneath an old pine tree and went to sleep. She awoke to the sound of a stick stirring and tapping. A warm bowl of tea offered by a monkey teased. steam rising gently. Very glad to have the tea and the company. She said, "Thank you. My name is Wabi Sabi." "That's wonderful," the monkey replied. Encouraged, she asked, "Do you know what that means?" "Well, that's," he began. "I know. Hard to explain," Wabi Sabi said. But he went on. "The pale moon resting on foggy water. Hear that splash? A frog's jumped in." "That's Wabi Sabi?" she asked. "Is that all?" "I don't know if I can." "It's more," said the monkey. "Listen, watch, feel." He said no more. So she watched him make tea. He moved slowly but gracefully, as if he were dancing. And he handled his things as if they were gold, although they were wooden and clay. Wabi Sabi felt what was in her paws, a warm, heavy bowl, comfortable as an old friend, not fine, smooth china. She looked carefully at the woods surrounding them, and there was so much life as in the city. But here things were not clean, neat, and sharp-edged. There were no straight lines. Yet there were many designs on trees and clouds and dirty ponds. She saw that everything was alive and dying, too, like the damp autumn leaves curled beneath her feet. "Simple things are beautiful," she heard the monkey say as he poured more tea for her. And looking down at the tea in her bowl, seeing herself plain and beautiful, she whispered, "Now I understand." After some time, Wabi Sabi thanked her new friend and started back for home. Because she did not hurry, she found a place called Ginkakuji, the Silver Temple. There was nothing silver there, but she found the place to be very beautiful, in a wabi-sabi kind of way. Although the buildings and gardens were shaped by humans, they were neither fancy nor grand. Moved by the natural simplicity of the place, Wabi Sabi composed 3 short poems about what she saw. Yellow bamboo stalks bow by tea house doors so low, emperors must kneel. Dark buildings floating sit on white sand seas a stream, sweeps small stones chanting. The monk returns, leaves, to just raked sand. This humble cat might understand. Tired but glad, Wabi Sabi returned at last to her house. She curled up on the straw mat in the kitchen, enjoying the warmth there. She could smell the wind in her fur and feel her long, journeyed steps deep in her bones. The sun's last rays stretched a silver brushstroke shivers on warm, clouded glass. Now I think I know what to call this feeling. "It's Wabi Sabi!" cried her master, seeing her. "Where have you been?" "That's hard to explain," she purred, feeling simply and beautifully at home. The end. Stock photos for today's Time for All Ages can be found at Pixabay at pixabay.com. Interested in learning more about religious education at Unitarian Universalist Church of Silver Spring? Please visit our website at uucss.org/children or contact Interim Director of Religious Education, that's me, Marcia Thrall, at idreuucss@gmail.com.
Here at UUCSS, we find strength in one another. If your burdens are too heavy to carry, know that we are a community that cares, and we invite you to share your sorrows and know that you are not alone. And we invite you to share good things that have happened. We want to celebrate with you. During the music, if you are worshiping with us live, type a brief joy or sorrow in the chat box. Keep in mind, the chat is public during the premiere of today's church service. If you would welcome a conversation around the joy or concern, send an email to layministers@uucss.org. Let them know you need support. If you're watching this as a recording later, this can be a time for prayer or meditation or an opportunity to practice gratitude and to hold in loving compassion all those in your life and in our world who are in need. Before we all open our hearts to one another's joys and sorrows, I'll send a special shout out to Rob Dahlstrom for putting together the half hour of prelude music we heard earlier this morning and every week since we started online in March. We're all so grateful to Rob, just as we are grateful to Phyllis Stanley for her many weeks of piano playing, including this wonderful performance of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata during today's Time for Joys and Sorrows.
into our time for meditation. I invite you to join me on a journey to the heart of loss. Settle into a comfortable position where your body feels supported. Let your eyes close or soften your gaze. Let your breathing become slow and gentle. As your breath deepens, you begin to sink inside yourself as if pulled by gravity, traveling gently to a place deep within you, a tender corner of your heart that holds memories of loss. You might know this place well, or perhaps it's your first visit. The warm darkness surrounding you is comforting. Rest a while. You're safe here. As you sit quietly in the darkness, you recall losses that touched you deeply, whether long ago or just the other day. The death of a loved one, a precious friend, a loving pet. Lives and livelihoods lost to the pandemic. Devastation from fires, hurricanes, floods. Lives cut short by racism and police brutality. Species and habitats lost to climate change. Those hopes and dreams that never came to fruition. The inherited grief of ancestors. And so many other losses, large and small. Notice what thoughts or images come up for you without rejecting them or clinging to them. Notice what emotions arise in you and let them come. There is nothing to do, nothing to change. As these memories and feelings wash over you, a small voice chants a prayer. May I be open to the sorrow, to the pain of grief. May I be open to the sorrow, to the pain of grief. May I be present for my sorrow and all emotions that arise in me. May I be present for my sorrow and all emotions that arise in me. May I and all beings learn from and transform sorrow. May I and all beings learn from and transform sorrow. As the prayer ends, you thank your heart for holding your losses, knowing you can return to explore them at any time. Take a breath and begin to come back to the present time and space. Take another breath and slowly become aware of the room around you. Breathe out with a sigh and feel the vibration in your chest. Take another breath. Give yourself a tender hug and open your eyes when you're ready. Welcome back.
the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near me. Spirit, draw near me. Draw near me. Spirit, draw near me. Draw near me. Spirit, draw near me. Draw
The Unbroken by Roshani Rhea. She wrote this poem in 1991 after the fifth death in her family. There is a brokenness out of which comes the unbroken, a shatteredness out of which blooms the unshatterable. There is a sorrow beyond all grief which leads to joy, and a fragility out of whose depths emerges strength. There is a hollow space too vast for words through which we pass with each loss, out of whose darkness we are sanctioned into being. There is a cry deeper than all sound, whose serrated edges cut the heart as we break open to the place inside which is unbreakable and whole, while learning to sing. Good morning. I'm Deborah Thornton, a longtime member of UUCSS. I'm glad you're with us today as we reflect on loss and renewal and the process of moving from darkness toward light. My thoughts on this topic are informed by my personal experience following the tragic death last year of my beloved daughter, Anna, also known as Scout. You heard Scout's voice during the prelude. You saw her name on the memorial quilt for children of our congregation, where she is literally holding up the world. My heart was shattered by that loss, and the past year has been a slow, painful process of recovery, with occasional moments of happiness and hope. I never chose that path, and I would give up everything I learned along the way if it would bring my daughter back. Since that's not possible, I'll share what I've learned in the hope that it might help others, and possibly you, with the clear understanding that everyone's path is different. One caveat. My remarks today reflect my personal experience and should not be construed as professional advice. I know the subject of loss can stir up strong feelings. If that happens for you and you'd like to request support, please email layministers@uucss.org. So I'm speaking on loss and renewal because I know something about loss, and renewal is our worship theme for this month. Any other year, that would be a natural choice for September because it's a time of transitions and new beginnings. But this year, many of us are reeling from an overwhelming barrage of losses, including the loss of our sense of what's normal. How can we possibly find renewal in the face of all that loss? Franciscan priest and Christian mystic Father Richard Rohr says, loss and renewal is the perennial, eternal, transformative pattern. It's like a secret spiral. Each time you allow the surrender, each time you can trust the dying, you will experience a new quality of life within you. Well, I turned to the natural world to help me make sense of loss and renewal, in particular the moon. We're 4 days away from the new moon. It's the darkest point of the cycle and a symbol of renewal as darkness transitions to light. It's a time to set a new intention, explore a new way of being. Traditional gardeners say the new moon is a good time for planting because lunar gravity pulls water up and causes seeds to swell and burst. So that advice about planting made me wonder what germination might teach us about loss and renewal. Well, when I Googled germination, I discovered that the process is a pretty good metaphor to describe my spiritual and emotional journey through grief. I found 4 lessons here. Go deep and settle in, crack open, send down roots, and reach for the light. Lesson 1, go deep and settle in. The first step in germination is to plant the seed and let it rest in the darkness of the soil. The first step in moving from loss to renewal is to surrender to the dark, hollow place of grief without denying it or running for the exit. Now, by dark and darkness, I'm referring to the emotional depths that some people describe as a place with no light. What Roshani Rea called a hollow space too vast for words, through which we pass with each loss, out of whose darkness we are sanctioned into being. Darkness is by no means a pejorative term in my book. I believe darkness is fertile soil for growth and transformation. The Sufi mystic Rumi had a deep appreciation for darkness. He wrote, "In the blackest of your moments, wait with no fear. Life's waters flow from darkness. Search the darkness. Don't run from it." In her book, A Field Guide to Getting Lost, Rebecca Solnit says, "Leave the door open for the unknown, the door into the dark. That's where the most important things come from, where you yourself came from, and where you will go." This deep, dark place is where the seed gathers moisture and prepares to sprout. It's where we begin to digest and metabolize our losses. Come here as often as you need to, and stay a while. Something is stirring. Be still and listen. Lesson 2, crack open. The next step in germination is for the seed to crack open so roots and sprouts can emerge. The next step in moving through grief is to crack open and let your feelings flow. Grief brings up powerful, primal emotions that show up differently for everyone. As Buddhist teacher Frank Ostaseski noted, grief has a unique rhythm and texture in each of us. It cannot be rushed. Some people cry oceans of tears. Some are angry or nauseous. Others are numb with an absence of expression, while still others experience wild, out of control displays. Everyone finds their own way to grieve. In his powerful book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, psychotherapist Francis Weller urges us to see grief as vital and necessary rather than something to be endured. and to develop what he calls an apprenticeship with sorrow. The first task of that apprenticeship is to learn how to be with and honor our grief, however it shows up. Weller says that welcoming everything that comes to us is the secret of being fully alive. Cracking ourselves open and letting our feelings flow can be messy and scary, but it's essential if we're to move through grief in a healthy way. There is no shame in this. As Leonard Cohen says in his song Anthem, ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. As we heard in Rashani Rhea's beautiful poem, there is a cry deeper than all sound, whose serrated edges cut the heart as we break open to the place inside which is unbreakable and whole, while learning to sing. Letting ourselves express deep, raw emotions is difficult when we've been taught to keep a stiff upper lip. It's even more challenging in the face of toxic positivity that puts a sugar coating on everything. Trust me, the last thing someone in the throes of grief needs to hear is, everything happens for a reason, or she's in a better place. Responses like that invalidate our authentic emotions, and they can cause shame and stress. We need to promote a culture that respects the inherent worth and dignity of every human emotion. We need to teach our children and ourselves to recognize the full range of our emotions and express them in healthy ways. And we need to learn how to support others in ways that validate their feelings instead of minimizing them. May we be open to the sorrow, to the pain of grief. May we be present for our sorrow and all emotions that arise. May all beings learn from and transform sorrow. I invite you now to reflect on your own experiences of loss and consider, what is longing to be renewed in you? Welcome back. I hope that reflection was meaningful for you. Let's see how that germination's coming along. Lesson 3, send down roots. Wow, look what happened while we were away. That little bean has begun to reach down and reach up all at once. It has a beautiful network of roots that will anchor the plant and allow it to absorb nutrients from the soil. Roots are important to help us process loss and move toward renewal. We need spiritual, emotional, and social roots to hold us steady as waves of grief wash over us. I don't know how I would have survived my traumatic loss without the emotional and spiritual support of family, friends, and community, including this beloved congregation. Strong roots are especially critical when we face collective losses that impact us as individuals and as a society, such as the many forms of loss we're dealing with at the present moment. In these uncertain times, we need to send our roots down deep to support and nourish ourselves and each other. In the words of UU Minister Gretchen Haley, what our faith asks of us, what our faith imagines for us, is that somehow, right at that moment when our hearts break, we will find our way to see through that heartbreak. We will stay put, not close off, not run away, not hurt back, but keep on being in relationship, doing what we can to repair the world and each other. Which brings us to lesson 4, reach for the light. Our friend the bean began to reach toward the light while it was still sending down roots. Grieving humans generally need a little more time before we're ready to consider the possibility that there might be something beyond the depths of our sorrow. And what I find inspiring about this stage of germination is that the sprout reaches for the light, having never known anything but darkness. Let me say that again. The sprout reaches for the light, having never known anything but darkness. That, my friends, is what Desmond Tutu meant when he said, hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. No matter how deep our sorrow, something eventually begins to unfurl within our hearts, often when we least expect it. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. expressed it well when he said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." I was planning to close with a lesson from the final phase of germination, that moment when the sprout breaks through the soil and basks in the light. I even had a juicy quote from Otto Scharmer of MIT's Sloan School of Management about connecting to future possibilities. To be perfectly honest, though, I'm not there yet. I can't speak from an experience I haven't had. I've come a long way from scraping up the shards of my shattered heart last year, but renewal, it's still aspirational for me. Instead, I'll lean into infinite hope and heed the advice of Brian Arthur of the Santa Fe Institute. Retreat and reflect. Allow the inner knowing to emerge. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till till I find it. There is more love somewhere. Amen, and blessed be.
Wow. Thank you, Deborah. The Unitarian Universalist Church of Silver Spring is an active community with a rich heritage and a purposeful future. I'm sharing some pictures with you today to remind us of our covenant with each other. Thank you to Marty Atias for the photo of Dean Kerrigan, and to Steve Lead and Deb Weiner for taking the photos of our church and our church community members yesterday, of some of us maintaining our church grounds. The commitments of generous gifts from our members and friends helps to keep the Unitarian Universalist Church of Silver Spring strong and adaptable today during these difficult times. During the offertory, there are 3 ways you can make your financial gift to the congregation. The first option is to download the Give Plus mobile app from Vanco to set up an account. The second option is to use your phone to text a message to 833-880-1363. On your screen are instructions for both of those options. There is one more option if neither the app nor texting works for you. Just mail your check directly to the church through the U.S. Post Office. Note that the church no longer requests that you mark your envelope to the attention of the collector. It is safest to just mail it to the church in an unmarked envelope with your return address. The collector will definitely receive it. As a community, we need each other now more than ever. Please give as generously as you're able. As we make our gifts, we give thanks to our musicians for this performance of Dark of the Moon by Karen Beth.
Dark night, starry night, new beginnings. Dark night, starry night, will come to be. Dark night, starry night, new beginnings. Dark night, starry night, will come to be. Dark night,
Dark of the moon, what we envision will come to be by the full moonlight. Dark of the moon, new beginnings. Dark of the moon, plant a seed tonight. Dark of the moon, what we envision will come to be by the full moonlight. Dark of the moon.
Please join us in singing A Lovely Round, In These Times. The lyrics will be on your screen.
In these times, in these uncertain times, I will remain open to the miracle that is each moment.
In these times, in these uncertain times, I will remain open to the miracle that is each moment. In these times, in these uncertain times, I will remain open to the miracle that is each moment. In these times, in these uncertain times, I will remain open to the miracle that is uncertain times. I will remain open to the miracle that is I will remain open to the miracle that is uncertain times. I will remain open to the miracle that is I will remain open to the miracle that is uncertain times. I will remain open to the miracle that is each moment.
For those of you who are watching live, the link to get to our virtual coffee hour is in the All Church email sent out this week and again this morning. Alternatively, you can watch your screen for information on how to obtain the coffee hour link another way after the service. If you lit a chalice this morning, get ready to extinguish it. Let us know in the chat that you will carry the flame. Please join me in the words of our chalice extinguishing. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.
To Know the Dark by Wendell Berry. To go in the dark with the light is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark. Go without sight and find that the dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings.
In the darkness we walk with light. In the darkness we walk with light. Like the night blooming jasmine, we light up the night. In the darkness we walk with light. In the darkness we walk with light. In the darkness we walk with light. Like the night blooming jasmine, we walk walk with light of the night. Like the darkness, we walk with light of the night. Like a night blooming jasmine, we light up the night. In the darkness, we walk with light.
A shining darkness glows in me. Its warmth and beauty sets me free. There is a darkness in my soul. Its warm black power makes me whole.
A shining darkness glows in me.
A shining darkness glows in me.
Its warmth and beauty sets me free.
In the darkness, we walk with light.
Darkness, we walk
In the
with
darkness, we walk
In
with
the
light.
darkness, we
Like
walk
the
with
dark blooming
light.
jasmine,
Like
with
the dark blooming jasmine, we light up the night.
we walk
Like
with
the
light.
dark blooming jasmine, we walk
A
with
shining
light up
darkness
the
glows in me.
Like the dark blooming jasmine, we walk
A
with
shining
light up
darkness glows in me.
In the darkness, we walk
Its
with
warmth and
light.
beauty set me
Like the
free.
darkness, we walk with light of the night.
We
In
walk
the
with
darkness, we walk
In
with
the
light of the
darkness,
night.
we walk
Like
with
the shining darkness,
walk with light like the dark blooming jasmine. We